Welcome to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Shade Curry, and I believe every divorced woman deserves a romantic relationship where she feels safe, loved, and cherished. You can create the most amazing life after divorce, and I will teach you how. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I have here on Zoom with me Elizabeth Sherman, a fellow coach and master certified health and life coach. Elizabeth helps women in perimenopause and menopause manage their symptoms, as well as other stressful demands that this season of life brings. Elizabeth hosts a weekly podcast called Done with Dieting. It's a podcast for the woman who, in spite of all of those demands we just mentioned, has been socialized to focus on her appearance, selflessly do for others, and in doing so, become the best supporting actress in the movie of her own life. Elizabeth, welcome to the podcast. It's really great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be so much fun because I don't really talk about my divorce very much. I don't know how many people really know that I've been divorced.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know either. And then we had this connect call, and somewhere along the way, you said something that made me think, I wonder if she's been divorced. It sounded like there was a story there. And I'm so glad you raised your hand to come here and tell your story. I really appreciate having you. I wanted to ask a little bit about what it means to be the best supporting actress in one's own life.
Yeah.
Because that is just like, that really resonated.
Well, so many of us, we support the people around us, and our own needs we are not meeting our own needs. And so when you think about creating a movie about your own life, everyone else is the star, but it's your movie. So you become the best supporting actress in the movie of your own life. Like, it doesn't make sense. And so really empowering women to take back their own life and live the life that they want, not the life that other people want for them. Because at the end of the day, you are the only one who suffers the consequences of your own decisions.
Yeah, that is so true. I mean, and that's just so normalized, being that supporting actress. Like, okay, you're going to be a wife, and then you're going to be a mother, and then you're going to be a good sister, and you're going to be a good friend, and you're going to be a good this, good that, good that. And it's like, when do I just get to be me?
Yeah.
Like, and some of the ways that I have thought about it when I've had to pull myself out of that caretaking mode is I will imagine myself just standing in space. Like, I'm hanging in space and Earth is all the way over there. And I will ask myself, so who am I now? And it feels scary because, of course, we resist being in that space where we're alone with ourselves. But that exercise always helps me center back in who I am. Because I'm when I came into this world, it was just me. Yeah. I didn't have all these other roles attached to me. I was just this life that came into the world. And for women, we're almost, unless we take the time to reconnect with that, nobody gives you the space to do that.
Right. And for so many of us, we think, or I don't know if we think it or if we've been taught it, but we have this idea that if I do for others, that they will do for me.
Yeah.
But all of us are very self-centered. And so you're not going to get what you quote unquote deserve until you ask for it, because other people are not mind readers. And so we have to show up for ourselves. We have to ask for what it is that we want and need. And for many, that's really freaking scary because, one, we've never asked for it before. And so therefore, we don't really know, can the people that I'm surrounded with, can they support me in this way? And so I was just talking on my own podcast about this, that we are afraid we become like the cool girl or the low maintenance woman because we're afraid that other people aren't going to be able to, or that they're going to disappoint us and they're not going to be able to show up for us.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And even high maintenance was a term that just had like a little bit of shaming around it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it shows up in our eating. It shows up in our daily activities. It shows up everywhere in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, growing through my divorce and growing through being an entrepreneur and making space for myself, there have been times when I've had to say, it's okay for you to take this time to do the thing you want to do, because I'm literally taking the action of making the time, doing what I want, and then feeling guilty the whole way.
Okay, so I have something for you and for your listeners. So another coach who is also in the advanced certification of feminist coaching for that we took, where we met, gave me this gift. And it was, if you are ever making the decision between feeling resentful or feeling guilty, choose guilt every single time.
Yes, that's Karen Anderson.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. And she's actually been on the podcast as well to tell her own story. But that's because and she deals with women who are experiencing shame around their mother-daughter relationship, which, if there's a relationship that has shame and guilt, like just kind of attached to it, it's that one. So yeah. All right, let's dive into divorce.
Yes, please sign me up.
We'll just start from the beginning. Like, how, your first marriage, how old were you when you got married? Why did you get married? Why did you choose that relationship?
Oh, such beautiful questions. So I think that I chose my first husband because I bought into the idea that as we got older, that women had a lower chance of getting married. And I was afraid of the socialization. It was kind of like a living game of musical chairs. Like, all of my friends were starting to couple up and all of my friends were starting to get married. And I started seeing the quote unquote eligible bachelors like get scooped up. And there was something in me. I knew that he was not the right one for me. But I don't know. I bought into this idea that I could make it work, that being with someone who wasn't the best person was better than being alone.
Yeah.
And there were tons of red flags. And I started talking to people about it before the marriage. I was like, I have questions, and everyone kind of dissuaded me. They were like, everyone has doubts.
Yeah.
But I'm married today, and the doubts that I had in marrying my current partner were totally different than the doubts that I had in marrying my first husband. The doubts that I had for him were just like, is this right? I don't know. There were a lot of, as I said, there were a lot of red flags. One of them, which we briefly talked about before we hit record, was that I was never sure that I wanted to have kids. And he was banking on the fact that I would want to have kids. I don't have kids today. And almost immediately after we got married, his family started pressuring us with, like, seriously, on the wedding, people started asking us, when are you going to have kids? Yeah. And again, I didn't know if I wanted to have kids. I didn't have any role models in my life of women who were older, who were married, who did not have children. So I didn't really know what that could look like. But at the other hand, I didn't know, I didn't see myself being in retirement and not having kids, like having adult children. So I was really conflicted. I'm not really a baby person. And so like the thought of like having a baby, like really scared this out of me. But anyway, so yeah, like people started putting pressure on us to have children. And then after about 2 years, he started putting pressure on me. And I think that I was really afraid that he was going to do something manipulative for me to get pregnant. And that actually really scared me. I think that looking back at the 23, 24-year-old version of myself who was married and in that relationship, I knew subconsciously that if I had children, that I would always be tethered to him. And I don't think that I really loved him. And I was afraid of, what that would look like moving forward.
Yeah. Did he know that you had doubts about having children?
Well, yeah. So I had told him that I didn't want children, but that I didn't, just what I told you, that I didn't see myself always not wanting children. I just didn't want them then and didn't know that I would ever actually want them.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had this conversation with clients, who are like, I don't know if I want kids and things like that. And the attitude that comes to them from people around them and from even men that they are dating and having this conversation with is, oh, you'll change your mind.
Yeah.
That doubt is dismissed. People are just like, well, of course you will. Yeah. Of course you'll change your mind. Like, you'll be okay down the line. And it's so condescending to a woman. And it really goes back to women not owning their bodies. It's like, well, of course you will. That's what your body is for. That's the subtext of that attitude is, well, of course all women want kids. Like, if you have the requisite parts, of course you do.
Well, and also, what is the definition of being a woman? Being a woman also means having a natural tendency to want to care for children. And so me being someone who's like, I don't know what to do with a baby, like I was scared, like, should I move into motherhood? And like everyone would tell me, oh, you would be such a good mother. But I just didn't have the desire. And one of the other coaches, I don't know if you've talked to Amanda Kingsley.
Not on the podcast, though.
Okay. Yeah. So she's an abortion coach, and she talks a lot about women who regret their abortions, but what we're not talking about are women who regret having children.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yep.
And I'm just...
You can't say that. No. You can't have a human that you brought into the world walking around and then say, I wish I hadn't. Yeah.
There's so much shame associated with that.
Yeah. And that's just what's quote unquote normal for things that have to do with being a woman. You either fit into the narrative that is handed to you, or you're shamed for not fitting into the narrative. Yeah. Like, you either love being a mother, or you're shamed for not, loving being a mother. You're either a mother or shamed for not being a mother. You're either a mother who does things the way it's prescribed, or you're shamed for not being a mother who does things the way it's prescribed.
Oh, yeah. Like, I remember in college, our dean of students was married, and he and his wife adopted a child. She apparently didn't want the child. And so he became the primary parent of this little boy. And I remember seeing all of the judgment that people had towards her, because he was the one who was picking the boy up from school and taking care of him and so on and so forth. Yeah. But we don't do that for fathers.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Like, it's just incredible, just the amount. It's like, it's the default is to look for, where is the shame? Where is the almost like, and there's a podcast episode that some of our cohort members and I did with Cara Lowenthal doing the feminist certification about then women of color then have an additional. So now, if you can be like, oh, I'm going to send my kid to school with a Snickers bar and an apple because today is the day we're going to do something really silly. But then if you're now a woman of color, or if you are poorer, then it's like, no, you can't have a fun day. Your kid cannot have a fun day, because the meaning of that is that you are not nourishing your child appropriately. It goes on and on and on. What things, now you are, in midlife, no kids by choice. Have you experienced that, direct shaming, or have you heard comments directed at you around the fact that you chose not to have children? Do you wonder exactly how divorced women just like you are meeting eligible men who want a real relationship and a commitment? They're doing it by dating with their core values. Your core values are the GPS that lead you to the partner you've been looking for. When you use your core values on dating apps, text messages, and at social events, you will easily connect with your true match partner without chasing, settling, or wasting time with non-committal men. I have taught exactly how to do this in the 2-hour Core Values Dating Blueprint course available on my website, shadecurry.com/dating. That's SADECURRY.com/dating. You will learn exactly how to identify your core values and use them on your dating profile, how to ask the right questions via text, and how to tell the right stories on dates, so that you attract the right people and repel those who aren't right for you. If you're ready to meet your true match, hop over to shadecurry.com/dating or click the link in the show notes. Now back to the episode.
At this point, no. And I think, so full transparency to all the listeners, I live in Mexico, and my husband and I moved here 6 years ago, and we wouldn't have been able to move here if we had children. Well, maybe we would have, but it would have been more difficult.
Yeah.
And so I think that all of the people who maybe judged me as a younger woman, that now they're like, oh, wait, maybe she was onto something.
Yeah.
Because my life is actually pretty spectacular now.
Yeah. Did you have comments earlier? Like, 20s or 30s?
For sure.
Yeah.
You'll regret it. Basically.
Yeah. The general attitude has been like that I've heard is just more like that those people are selfish. They don't want to give. They don't want to give back. They don't want to, people who don't, and both, I think couples, I've heard it around couples who've been, childless by choice, like they don't want to give back. They don't want to contribute to humanity. Those are some of the things that I've heard people say.
But it's so interesting that when you look at the economics of a double income couple who doesn't have kids and a family or a couple that does have kids, that the couple who doesn't have kids is able to invest in retirement. They're able to give financially to their community. There's so many things.
There's so much more time.
Exactly.
One of the people I think about is Oprah, who is childless pretty much, or give or take by choice. And she said, I wouldn't have been able to create what I created if I'd had children because of the type of mother I would have wanted to be. Yeah. And so she made the choice. She was like, I want to create this thing. If I have a child, I won't be there for the child the way I want to be there for the child. And so her choice was to not have children so that she could create what she wanted to create, which, again, in the narrative, it's like, well, maybe you could have. I know a lot of people who don't think that was the right choice for her, but I'm like, how powerful.
Yeah. But look at what she's been able to do with all of those girls in Africa.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. The girl, and not just the girls, the generation that she was able to educate. Her show alone, just introducing ideas and, opened the world. Because I remember I started watching her. I was in Nigeria watching the Oprah Winfrey show. And she brought on guests that just had ideas that I would never have been able to consider if she didn't create her show.
Yeah. Oh, I talk about Oprah all the time. I love her.
Yes.
Love her.
Okay. So, how did you make the decision? You said you didn't want to be tethered to your ex forever. You were afraid that you were going to end up in a situation that, you didn't want. So did you make the choice to
Okay. So, oh gosh, this feels very shameful. So vulnerable. So I actually had an affair. And while I was having the affair, I started questioning myself. Like, I had the belief that women who are, or people who are in happy marriages do not have affairs. I remember actually processing this. I was like, okay, so people who are in happy marriages don't have affairs. I'm having an affair. I didn't actually want to break it off. And I was like, so therefore, I must not be in a happy marriage. And I left.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting how that path to, I guess we say, coming out of denial. Because chances are, and it's interesting, I've had this conversation with another podcast guest around, and in her case, she wanted to break up her marriage, and she's like, how do I do this? So hers was conscious, but the situation was the same. It was the denial around, this isn't working.
Yeah.
Coming to that, and all of us, I was in the same. I was married for 17 years. The marriage was toxic from day one. And I still didn't let myself say this isn't working. Yeah. Right up until the end.
Yeah.
What is it about women that like keeps us from just saying, hey, this isn't working? Like, this is just not working.
Well, I think that it's because from the outside, people look at it like my partner, and they're like, well, he's good enough. I could have said he's good enough. And therefore, like, what do I deserve something that is excellent? Like, what do I deserve? And what is he? Right? Does that make sense?
Yes. No, it really does. Like, we don't think we deserve something better. Again, then the narrative comes in, you're being too picky, you want too much,
exactly.
What doesn't exist, all of that, which, we hear so much more in dating, but it's coming up here where we make these choices based on, well, we need to fulfill this role versus thinking about, who am I?
Yeah.
What do I want?
Yeah. And you should be grateful that you have anything at all.
Oh, goodness.
Right?
Yeah. I heard that. I told myself that during my first marriage. Yeah.
And so I don't know that I felt like I was worthy of anything better.
Yeah. Wow. Man, that really hit me. Yeah. So
I don't know that I've ever said those words out loud. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing. Like, every episode, there's always someone who's like, oh my God, that was the person who had my journey. So thank you so much for sharing. All right, so let's get to the fun part.
Yeah.
The dating. Did you date? What was that journey like?
Yeah. So, I looking back at the past version of myself, she really did not have a lot of dignity and self-esteem. And I remember I got stood up a number of times. I met my husband actually through work, and he was living in Austin, Texas. I was living in Chicago at the time, and we worked for the same company. And there wasn't actually a lot of dating that I did before I met him. I would say that I was single probably about 3 years until we met. And then, we started dating. We were dating for 5 months, long distance. And okay, kids, don't do this at home. After dating for long distance for 5 months, I decided to move to Texas, to Austin, Texas, buy a house with him, and move in together.
Yeah. I mean, here you saying, don't do this at home, but there's actually a little bit of nuance to that situation versus meeting someone on an app.
Yeah.
Because he was what I call in your network. He was in your community. There were sort of like these guardrails around the relationship that gave it more. It's like, you know how like you add points? They gave you more points. It was still a risk, but here's the thing, every relationship is still a risk.
Yeah.
But I would say because you worked for the same company and you knew him, and there was that, like, it's sort of like the accountability that being in that community would have given you, you had more points than, you know, you meet someone online who lives in DC and you live in Dallas, and then you move, you know.
Well, but the truth is like, if you're living in the same city, at least, you have more access to that person. You can see them more frequently. We didn't spend more than like 3 or 4 days together at a time within those 5 months. And so I really didn't know, like, if he was having a bad week, what would that look like? Or, you know, even any of the finances stuff and how he used money on a regular basis.
Right. So he wasn't qualified. You didn't qualify him.
I did not. No,
okay.
No.
All right, kids, don't do this at home, like she said.
Hold my beer. Don't do this at home.
Yeah. So, okay. So, I mean, well, that was a great story, though. Do you know why did you feel the confidence to do that? Like, why were you willing to take that risk?
Oh, good question. You know, I think that I had these, so I grew up in Chicago. I lived in Chicago my entire life. And I always had this nagging feeling in the back of my head that, that I was never going to die in Chicago, that there was a smaller town that was waiting for me. And I think that my husband and I, Gary, we had this idea of, well, if we're going to make it work, we should at least live in the same city. And he was happier in Austin than I was in Chicago. So therefore I moved.
Yeah.
And it just kind of made sense to move in together because we were probably going to be together anyway. And this was at the height of the tech boom. So this was in 2001. We both worked for a high-tech company. And I mean, we were just rolling in money at the time. We would go out for lavish $200 dinners every single night. And so we didn't like putting money down for a house. It was kind of like, oh yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, exactly. It was an insane time. But yeah, so that was kind of it.
Right. How did you resolve not having, you said you didn't have a really high self-esteem during that period coming out of your marriage. Did you resolve that before meeting Gary? Or was that just, I love that you shook your head because I'm always telling women, you don't have to fix everything before you meet a good guy. I love it.
Yeah. He taught me a lot about relationships. I really went through some growing pains and really started questioning my worth at that point. I don't know that I can answer that question. Like, what were the steps that I took to increase my self-esteem? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe you didn't. I mean, you did, and I asked the question just because some people did, and then some people are just like, no, I didn't. I've had a guest on the podcast who said, "Oh, I had an affair. I was in terrible shape. I'd never done any healing, any coaching, anything, and then my husband wanted to stay with me, and I didn't want to stay with him, so I divorced him, and I met someone else and married him. And it wasn't until I'd been in that marriage for a couple of years that I realized, oh, I should really go to therapy." Because there's this story that we are broken, and until we're fixed, we don't deserve love. Like that's that women are somehow unlovable because they have issues, as though these issues are just not part of like issues that everybody has, and all humans have issues. It's one of the reasons, like when I teach dating after divorce, I never prescribe a healing period. I actually don't think a healing period is necessary for everyone.
Yeah.
Because all of us, wherever we are worthy of love, are 100% lovable. We are worthy of love. We deserve love. Now, we may not have the skills that we need. You might need to work on some. If you literally do not have the skill of being in a relationship or communicating in a relationship, yeah, you might want to do that. If you see it, if you know that, but even that doesn't keep you from being in a relationship. It's this weird requirement stacking that gets put in place for women. It's like, you're still not good enough. And that narrative is there, and it just gets put into the dating world. We all know people who have issues, who have all kinds of problems, who are in great relationships because what they did was they found the partner that was the perfect match for the issues that they had.
Yeah. Oh,
and not a match in terms of toxicity, but a match for like, oh yeah, these things that are your problems are not a problem for me.
Yeah. And I think that when I look back at that version of myself, I said self-esteem, but you know how there are the two different types of dynamics in a relationship. One is like the puppy dog, where it's like, love me, love me, love me, love me. That was me. And versus like the cat that's like, yeah, I'll come and go.
Take you or leave you.
Exactly. And so, yeah, that's what I was doing. I was just like, I will take anything. I will. And that was evident in my first marriage, that I was like, I will take your crumbs. And so, moving into the relationship that I have with my husband, I think I just learned to start asserting myself and understood. I think I just felt really safe in this relationship, which allowed me then to assert myself and ask for what I needed.
Yes, that's so true. That, because it's like, if you're, there's so much nuance to it. Like, it's not a formula. For some people, they learn that assertiveness, then they go into a relationship, and then that gets preached as the formula. Is to go learn it first. And then for some other people, they are dating. Like, a lot of my clients are dating, and they learn the assertiveness as they watch themselves on each date. And they're like, oh, this is where I should have stood up for myself or advocated for myself. And then for other people like you, it's like, no, I just kept going.
Yeah.
And I just found a relationship that felt safe. And then I practiced my new skills in that relationship.
Yeah.
Works in so many different ways. So how did you know Gary was the one?
Oh, good question. I don't know. I don't know.
Because you moved in together and then you got married. So at different points.
I was actually prepared to not get married ever again and live together forever. But I don't know. I just felt like this, like we were walking together through life, hand in hand. It was a partnership that we had. And I was actually surprised when he proposed, because I really wasn't expecting it. Like, after my first marriage, I really wasn't expecting to get married again. And so, yeah, I think it was just a level of comfort and knowing that it just felt right.
Yeah. What are the elements of right? And I know that I'm asking you all the hard questions. And I ask this, I like asking these questions because there's the fairy tale version of like marriage and dating that women have. And then there's the feel when it is right. We don't get a lot of education on like what it looks like when it feels right. So we make a lot of mistakes along the way thinking it's right.
Yeah.
Because nobody ever comes back to tell us, hey, when it's right, it feels like this.
Yeah. So like alignment is kind of, and intuition is what you're talking about. And, I look back at like that first version the version of myself who got married in my first marriage. And 23 is such a young age. Like,
it really
what was I thinking?
It really is.
And so I think that I was just willing to take the risk that it was the right thing. The other thing that I do a lot, I know that this works for me, but it might not work for everybody, is that I have a really strong vision of what my future self is. And so like, if I can tap into can I see myself with him in X number of years? Then that kind of signals to me that I'm on the right track. If I don't, if I'm not able to visualize something, I know that that thing isn't right for me, that it's not in alignment with me for some reason. So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of
No. You are spot. You're like hitting the nail right on the head.
Okay.
One of the first activities I do with my clients when they're new is we do a whole self-discovery thing. And a few of the questions are, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years, 20 years? When do you, like, we go through the whole thing as much as they're able to. And then we move on to the next module, which is your ideal partner. And we circle back. Okay, here's your ideal partner. Does this vision fit in with the vision that you had for yourself? And there's always gaps.
Yeah.
Right. And most people don't even take the time to do that. Like you did. And so we're picking someone based on the fact that they made us laugh on the first date, or they want a commitment, or they're pursuing us, quote unquote, whatever that means, versus who am I going to be? Who am I working towards becoming? And is this person going to be able to keep up? Are they moving in the same direction? Or am I getting ready to tether myself to someone who is like moving in the opposite direction? So that is like spot on. It's really knowing yourself, not just your current self, but your future self, and making that choice for all of your selves.
Yeah. Because I think that, when we get married at 23, there's so much life. Like, you hope that you grow in the same direction, like you said, but what if you don't? Like, there's so many different variables that come into play there.
Yeah. I mean, you can only make the choice, the best choice you can, but if you don't even consider, that people change or that you're going to grow, then it's just like not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Absolutely.
I want to open it up to and then the audience really is mostly women 40 plus, 40s, 50s, 60s who are dating after a divorce and, using apps, which you had the great fortune to not have to use to find your partner. But which I love. Like, once you decipher the apps, they really are not a problem at all, but they're in this new world and they're dating and they have all the same thoughts that you've had, that I've had, that, what is your, and then knowing that you are someone who works with intuition, listening to our bodies, choosing things that feel good to us. Do you have any advice around how a woman can choose a dating journey that feels good? So it's, feeling good, not in the sense that like, oh, I'm not going to date, I'm going to, hide, but I'm going to be in this space, but I'm going to do it in a way that feels good, where I'm not punishing myself with, this dating journey and with this need to meet a partner.
Yeah, I think about, like, if something were to happen where I had to start dating again, God forbid that should happen. But I think that I would like to approach it from having experiences with people that doesn't put so much pressure on that date and just makes it like, oh, who is this person going to be? Are they going to become a friend? Are they going to lead to, maybe they're not the person that I date or end up with, but maybe they will have a brother or a friend or someone. But the other thing that actually, here's, I think, the better answer to your question is, I have a client, actually, she's a friend. And a couple of years ago, we were talking and she made the comment of, at the beginning of the year, I like to ask myself, who am I going to meet this year who I am going to love? And so, right? Like, there are people walking around this earth right now who you have not met yet, who you are going to love them. Like, who are those people?
Yes.
And I love that idea, because now when I walk into parties, first of all of the people who I love, when I've met them the first time, I did not like them. And so, knowing that about myself, I've now kind of changed and become more open in terms of who I talk to, who I communicate with, and how I present myself and react to people.
Yeah.
And so now when I'm able to go into parties, I no longer have that anxiety of, are they looking at me? But like, is someone in here? Do I get to discover them who I am going to like be best friends with?
Yeah.
So,
oh, that's so good, because really relationships and connection with people is a gift.
yeah.
And I think our experiences and cultural narrative, all the things, almost flips that on its head and creates this fraught experience when we are in relationships, when we go to networking events, or when we are in a certification cohort, or when we are among other coaches, wherever we are. If you've had trauma, or you've believed a misconception around connection, it really does create all of that anxiety, because there's an quote unquote an outcome that you're supposed to be going for. You're supposed to be impressing that person and making sure they like you, or making sure this relationship goes somewhere, versus there's a human in front of me and they're a whole universe that I haven't explored. And if I get to explore this universe for like 5 minutes, get to learn something new, experience something new, hear something new, that alone is worth it.
Yeah. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Elizabeth. I know it's going to resonate with so many people. Thanks for sharing your advice. Please tell the listeners again what you do, who you work with, like, your typical client, and where they can find you if they want to connect.
Yeah. So you can find me at elizabethsherman.com. I have a podcast called Done with Dieting. I work with women in midlife who want to get off the diet roller coaster, who want to be healthier, but are done with diets and don't want to do that anymore. And so what I teach my clients is actually how to have more authority in her life, how to stop people pleasing, because you would be surprised at how many eating decisions that we make based on what other people want. And so really being able to set boundaries and have better time management, all of that great stuff, which leads to us taking care of our health. So that's kind of a little bit of snippet of what I do. And I'm on Instagram at Done with Dieting Podcast. And then you can also find me on Facebook at Total Health by Eliz.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thanks for sharing your story. We will have all of those links in the show notes. So listeners, please follow Elizabeth, learn more about her work. If you're a woman in midlife, for sure, there are very few of us who do not need this work in one form or another. So we want to thank you, listeners, for your time and attention today, and we will see you next time. Thanks for listening today. If you are ready to get married after divorce, I want to invite you to download my free 8-video training specifically designed to help divorced women date with ease and get married again. Head over to sadecurry.com to get started. That's SADECURRY.com. I'll see you inside.